Hey folks, got a weird angle here. I've got the camera pointing right up at the ceiling, so I just look like a giant. But check out the ceiling. How does it look? We finished in one weekend the whole kitchen area for the kitchen ceiling, the tongue and groove pine. And what is interesting about this, I think this video you'll like because Bryan has come up with, well, a few methods to help minimize gapping when doing ceilings. So there's a lot of tricks and tips and techniques that you can find on YouTube about when you're installing flooring or when you're doing even the cedar closet like I did in the last video. Things that you can do to kind of minimize the gaps. And Bryan, I think, has come up with some other pretty original ways. And who knows if maybe he's seen these on YouTube or not, but some ways to help really minimize those gaps. So check out what we did. And Bryan did, I'm going to say, probably 90% of it. I only helped at the beginning and the end. So part of this video is seeing how you can do almost a one-man install for ceilings, for tongue and groove ceilings. The only parts where I helped out were the trim and the center ceiling boards. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy and see the progression of our kitchen ceiling. Here we are, folks. It's our big weekend of putting up ceiling. Look at our very first board. Getting measured. So we had to move out all the cabinets. They're all back here in the corner. And I just left that big guy over there. But we're going to start here. I got a couple ladders up. Me and Bryan are going to do this. Trying to get started getting the ceiling up.
This first part might be tricky because drywall there with put trim on or something.
So here we go with the very first board, and we're using 3/4 inch tongue and groove pine. I finished it with a water-based polyurethane, a satin finish, so it has no glare. It's going to look really natural, but have just enough protection on it. With the polyurethane, just a light coat of that. We didn't want the ceilings to be super shiny or glamorous.
You see your mark on the wall?
Yeah.
Okay, so I gave you a tape measure. Can you hold it and measure?
Yeah.
You leave it come up.
3 1/8.
You know what I'm at?
First board.
Wrangle it.
Oh, right in my face.
What we do is cut a piece of pine, like 1x3 that we're going to trim everything in, and put a 45-degree angle on it and slide it right up on the bottom, and that'll cover up that whole space.
Oh yeah.
The little gaps. And then we could trim the whole outline too. Or just put some little scribe molding there or whatever. A bit cheaper.
Cool. All right. Let's get to cutting.
Yep.
Okay, here's our first stack. Got our first 7 to work with. Let's see if we can put them up. This is the tool we had to stop for. Vice grip.
Yep. So You put it on the joist and then use it to lever down.
Okay. We forgot to pick that up this morning when we went to the store.
Yes.
Indispensable tool. Okay, so show me what it does. Ah, a gap disappears. Okay, okay. It's not especially designed for that, but
no, but it works.
That's what it can do for you guys. A vice grip, vice clamp. The foam is all over the side of those 2x4s, and it makes it really slippery to grip on with that clamp. Oh well. We'll figure it out. Things were going along pretty good, and Bryan got into a rhythm where he figured out how to do the job himself. Basically by inserting the end of the board into the notch where the drywall meets the roof, he could get the board in position and then work on the far end and secure that, and then go over to the other ladder and secure that end into place as well. So besides the first couple of boards and the last 2 boards, Bryan did the entire ceiling himself with this technique. So it can be done solo, guys, if you want to do your own ceilings. So by the time Bryan was several boards in, he was picking up speed and had his technique down, so things were going a lot more quickly. You know, by the time he was on the other side of the ceiling, things were going 3 to 4 times faster. Second side. Going a lot faster than first side, isn't it?
Yes, I got my rhythm.
You got your rhythm, you got your groove, and you can really speed along your task. So about 7 more boards up there, and then the ones that go in the middle, and we're done. Ceiling. So come down this ladder, grab your gun, go up that ladder. It's like the single man ceiling install. Even though I've helped a couple of times. How to put up a tug of groove ceiling solo. You wedge in one end and line up the groove.
And then hopefully it sits nice and tight so you don't have to get down and get your clamp in here. This one I have to use the pry bar.
Why?
I can't get my clamp on. So I use the cat's claw.
Oh, the edge ones.
Hold that nice tight joint.
It's all about the right leverage. Now you can free up your clamp, move it down.
Yeah.
Safekeeping.
You can't set these nails because they're so thin.
Oh.
So if they got one sticking out, I just bend them over.
Oh. Has that been a problem?
Usually only if I shoot the gun sideways.
Oh. You know you're almost done when you're cutting the ceiling light holes on the last board for the ceiling, the center board. And boy, that thing is annoying to use. Bryan kept having it spin and shut off, but finally got them all done. So for the boards in the middle, this is definitely a 2-person job. So I was on the other ladder holding one end while Bryan was securing his end. And so the technique that we were using a lot of Irwin clamps to hold the board temporarily so you didn't have to hold it with your hands. And then Bryan would progressively work down the board. He would move the ladder and work down the board to make sure that the junction was tight before he nailed it into place. So he had a clamp on his side, I had the clamp on my side, and I just kind of clamped it to the joist while he was taking a couple of measurements to make sure that our distances were correct. And then he moved his ladder down to make sure that he could minimize the gapping on those center boards. So that part was a little bit tricky. And then after that, we were getting ready to put up the trim pieces. So you can see in this kind of work that you can't have too many clamps. I mean, whatever you can do to minimize that gapping between the boards so you have that polished look is essential. So luckily we had a lot of free clamps and we used all of them. The Irwin clamps, the vice grip clamps, the pry bar. Essential tools for doing a ceiling.
Okay, all that's left to do is the trim. Oh, one skinny piece up in there.
Yeah.
And then the trim in the middle and on all the edges.
Yeah. So we do all the edges. We'll do the diagonals first, and then I'm going to put in the horizontal pieces.
Okay.
Because this is over 12 feet, and my pieces are 12 feet long, so
Okay.
it's just a little bit over.
So first couple of trim pieces up, but not satisfied because there's a little bit of a gap.
Yeah, that was a good 3/8 to a quarter to 3/8.
Yep.
Fix it.
We're gonna fix it.
We'll fix it the best we can. Ugh. Let's move around, see the difference.
Oh, you mean bow-wise?
Yeah. I think it's the wall. It's not the wood.
Well, it also...
Oh, come up. Yeah, there you go. I'm good here.
It's not flush on the wall though.
I know, I ain't gonna be. This one.
And here's one of the last two pieces going up, one of the trim pieces covering the gap that is in the ceiling. And Bryan's still working on trying to minimize the gaps and the spaces using all of his little techniques of the clamps. But I think we're still going to need a little bit of quarter round trim on the walls because he really did all he could to minimize those gaps, but they were a little bit too big to disappear completely. And the last piece going into place. And this one is really a bugger because, you know, it's the very last piece. So there's not a lot of places to stick your clamps or your wedges when all of the boards are filled in. You can't grab onto the joists anymore. So, and I'm on my end holding the piece all the way on my end. So Bryan's got to get his nailed in really quick and then come down the ladder and get to my side and nail my side as well. But you'll see he wanted to prevent the bowing in the middle, and he wanted to figure out a way to space them apart, so he cut a piece of 2x4 with a little bit of an angle on the corners to kind of twist and knock into place so he could separate those boards and minimize the gap that was appearing in between them. So sometimes you can even use simple solutions. I mean, it was so tight it was just hanging there. But it did the trick. It really minimized it, maybe another 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. Because those boards were pretty tight that we were using for the trim. They didn't really have as much bend as the really, really long boards did. So they needed a little bit more muscle to get them exactly where we wanted them to be. But I think all of his tricks worked out pretty good as far as keeping our measurements consistent, not having the gaps, and having really nice visual flow to the ceiling. What do you guys think? Not a bad job for getting it done in one weekend, huh? I mean, really, I think we put the trim up maybe Monday night because we got really tired and it was getting late. But pretty much all the boards were done Saturday and Sunday. And so that's almost the entire ceiling minus the trim. The trim was a lot more measuring and cutting 45s and all that. So that was a little bit more time consuming. So we finished the rest of it on Monday. So we got to put up our kitchen lights next. This week we've got our electrician coming to finish the wiring for the box so we can get all of the rest of our outlets turned on. We'll actually have some decent lighting instead of all of this halogen lighting and flood lighting. And what else are we doing this week? We've got kitchen cabinets on the docket. So now that the ceiling is done, we also have the delivery of our stove, our gas stove. And I'm going to tell you guys about that as well. But luckily, you know, the whole job, it was a little bit time consuming, but it came out beautiful, I think. There's that kind of that gap up in there that Bryan wants to put a little quarter round molding on because he just can't bear to look at the gap. And it doesn't bother me, but he said it won't fly. Can't have any gaps on the ceiling. So there's that. And then nothing fell and smashed our tiles floor, so we didn't drop any tools other than a small, like, a putty knife. No major catastrophes. The floor survived, and there's just a couple of minor dings on the wall, painted wall, they'll have to touch up, but nothing too severe that can't be fixed with a little bit of paint. So that was our last weekend, guys, and we're looking forward to some more snow right now. It's snowing outside, and so yeah, it's it's wintertime. We got our winter projects, and we're gonna get some fun stuff done, including hooking up that gas stove. So stay tuned, guys. Thanks for joining us, and let us know what you think of the ceiling. I think it looks pretty nice, but maybe you have some other tips about installing tongue and groove ceiling, because we got a whole bunch more to do. We've got the whole loft and the rest of the house. So if you got any more tips on making it go faster, especially if you don't have a lot of helpers, you just have one, we'd love to hear it. All right, guys, take care. We'll see you next time.